Oh, these morning shows. Mesut Ozil. M to the E. No, I'm not going to do that. Looks like he's going. Looks like he's off. Looks like the period of time in which the German maestro has spent at the Arsenal is coming to an end. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where he might be ending up, because that is of much debate right now. But it looks like Ozil's time at Arsenal is finally coming to an end. Hello and welcome to the Good Talk. Back in with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series, where we react to the latest Arsenal news, get your thoughts in our live chat, and of course discuss those topics that are most important to Arsenal right now, and that is Mesut Ozil. Mesut Ozil, of course, been at the club since 2013, 7 years. If he'd have remained at the club to this summer, it would have been eight years. Mesut Ozil. That's like, I was about to say it's a third of my lifetime. It's less than that, which makes me feel slightly depressed. No, it's crazy how long he's been. I remember the day he signed. I remember is it Geraint Hughes from Sky Sports being outside the Emirates, everyone crowding around him, waiting for the news to drop, and eventually it did on one of the most exciting deadline days that we've ever seen as Arsenal fans. Yeah, it is an amazing thing to think that he's going to be going and leaving in the circumstances that he is, if you think all the way back to when he did sign. It's been a mad kind of 7.5 years. He's done a lot for the club at the start of kind of his tenure, and then things have soured towards the end, and it's not been too great since that point. And we'll probably discuss a lot of that. But first, let's kind of focus on the actual news, because there is a lot of conflicting reports about where he's actually going. Now, Chris Wheatley from football.london exclusively reported that he is in discussions with DC United in America in the MLS. But now the ever-present and ever-reliable AFC Bell has reported that he is pretty much going to be going to Turkey. I've also seen quite a lot of big Turkish accounts also saying that Fenerbahce have reached an agreement with him, and there's a link with Puma in there as well. Of course, are still, I think they're his sponsors, his kind of sportswear sponsors. So there's a lot to talk about there. What I want to get from you guys in the chat box is ultimately what you think about this happening. Also consider the fact that if we are to believe the reports, Arsenal are still going to pay his wages for the next 6 months, which I know a lot of people aren't happy with. A lot of people turn around and say, we'll just keep him. But to be honest, I think moving that negativity, that the character that's not very happy at the club, getting him out, moving him out of the environment, I think is probably a positive thing for sure. So let's see if you guys are in agreement with that kind of thing, or do you think that we should have just kind of kept him until the end if we were going to pay his wages? Anyway, Matt Greek says, off he goes. Regardless of the truths in his situation, we need to draw a line under this. It is a positive, one of the most talented players I've ever seen live, and I've been going for 30 years. And that's what I want this to kind of be. At the end of Ozil's tenure, and this is why people like Piers Morgan and some of the tweets he's been sending to Ozil, like, you could be critical of the guy, but don't tweet him, like tweeting him all of this abuse and like get out of our club and all of this stuff. And I don't understand. I understand that some people don't like him, and that's completely fair enough. And I've wanted him out of the club for a bit, not because of any personal agenda against him, just because I think that he's kind of not really going to give what we're paying him back to the club, and hasn't done it consistently for a long time. And we probably should have never given him that contract in the first place. And it's kind of held the club in a little bit of a difficult financial position ever since. And I'm hoping that we now learn from that and the Aubameyang contract as well. With the Lacazette situation, I'm hoping that we don't offer Lacazette a new deal in the summer, and we look to move him on no matter how good he is towards the end of the season. It's probably the best thing we do, considering he'll be nearing his 30th birthday very soon. So I think it's a learning curve. I think it's something that we should be happy about, and I think it should be something that ultimately is kind of an end of an era at Arsenal. If you link about all the other players that are also leaving, Socrates, Kolasinac, Mustafi, hopefully going to be going as well, David Luiz. Matt Macey looks like he's going to be going off to Hibs as well. There's lots of news that's kind of dropping about Arsenal and moving players on in these first kind of couple of weeks of the transfer window, so that we can focus the second half of January on maybe bringing in a new signing. Porky Porks, thank you so much for bringing a member. Fantastic name, I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the exclusive content. If you are, in fact, joining up as an expert member, I hope you enjoy it. The use of the Discord server. I'll make sure to post a new link for that in the community tab on our YouTube page. Tom says, peak Ozil was brilliant to watch and a perfect expression of Wenger. He just didn't fit as well in the modern football with the focus on defensive pressing. I agree with that. I think that ultimately Ozil is going to be someone that's remembered for the good things that he did, hopefully. And we can look back on his time at Arsenal. We can look at some of the shots he put into the ground that tipped over the keeper. We can look at some of the goals. I mean, I remember I was at the Emirates when he scored that really good volley against Newcastle. We think about the goal against Ludogorets. There's some amazing memories to think of when we talk about Ozil. But the likelihood is that we're going to be seeing him move on from the club very, very soon in a couple of weeks. Fapello says he is finally leaving. He disrespected our club. He never really ever gave 100%. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true at all. I think that's a very short-minded and blinkered view of the situation, to be honest. I agree in the sense that I think it's a good thing that he's moving on, but to completely delegitimize his entire career at Arsenal is just wrong. It's just wrong. It's just not true. Cooley Gouda says Ozil's penalty miss versus Bayern in 2013, choking away in the league in 2016 in the 10-2 aggregate against Bayern and the worst Baku 2019. I have nothing but bad memories during Ozil's tenure. For every bad memory, there's a good one. Like, if you're already remembering the bad things, maybe that's coming down to the type of person you are. Maybe you're just a pessimistic person that looks at things in that way. I don't know, but I think you should try and look at things in the most positive way. You know, at TGT, we always try to look at things in the most positive way, even when we want things to be moved on from. Oxo Cube says, in truth, I don't personally see the point in shipping him out if we're going to pay his wages. At least list him and try to squeeze the last out of him. I mean, Oxo, what I would say to that is that it's a negative character at the moment around the club. It's someone who's not happy to be here. It's someone that's maybe allegedly having an impact on the mentality of some other players. And I don't like some of the attitude of some of the tweets that he's put out. So moving that kind of poison chalice in a way out of the club in that sense is, I think a good thing. Peace Tembo says, peak Ozil was at Real Madrid, never lived up to the hype, but his link up with Alexis was special. However, we should have cut our losses in 2018 and started again. I agree. Matt Greek says, Tom did say it. My understanding is we are subsidising some and there is a fee to cover the rest. Well, I don't think that's necessarily true, Matt. We are paying his wages in full for the rest of the 6 months, supposedly, according to those reliable Turkish sources. So I think that we're still going to be paying a lot of his wages for the next 6 months still. E-commerce says Ozil never disrespected the club. He's over 32. He needs to secure the money. And when it comes to sort of the end of a footballer's career, I hate that people blame Ozil for the contract. Like, I think the contract was one of the worst things we could have done, but it's not Ozil's fault. It's not Ozil's fault he was given that contract. That's completely on the club for giving him that contract. It's completely on the club. You can't criticize Ozil for the contract. You can only criticize the person who gave it to him. Sarab says, where is he going? It looks like he's off to Turkey from the sounds of the most recent information, which is going to be interesting to see how that contradicts with the DC United information. Paul Guy says Ozil was a good player who ended up getting coddled in the last couple of years by Wenger and lost his way, unfortunately. Sustainable Life says, well, glad he is going and the club can move on, which is probably a good way of looking at it. It's just a time that we can finally move on. James Johnson says, I've got good memories of Ozil. 32 is not old for a player. He needs to go and play. I agree with it. What positives, Tom? Positives are that when he came in, obviously, he was one of the cornerstones that led to Arsenal ending their trophy drought. He was unbelievably good in that first season that led up to that final against Hull City. And he was so good in the final. He was so good in the lead up to it. I remember the game against Everton in the quarterfinal. He was excellent in that game. There are so many memories. I look back at Ozil being a fantastically good player for Arsenal. There are obviously a lot more recent ones when sticking the memory a lot more recently because, as I said, they're recent memories. So you have to kind of look back. And if you think about the length of time that he's been at the club, being nearly 8 years, if, say, you're a younger listener or you're a younger fan, if you are, about 16, 17, 18, maybe younger than that, when he joined the club, you were of an age which was still exceptionally young to kind of understand the rigors and the the kind of whole understanding of football. Like, I come from my personal perspective. The last 5-6 years, which is from my 20th birthday up to my 26th, which I am now, I've learned so much more about football. I appreciate football in a completely different way. And so I completely expect there to be a completely hyperbolic reaction to Ozil from a lot of the younger generation of fans, because I don't think they would have been old enough to appreciate what he did in his early years, and they've only kind of known what he did in his later years. This isn't me defending the guy in terms of his last few years at Arsenal. He should have been moved on. We should have moved on from Ozil, but we didn't. But it doesn't mean it completely taints his entire... Is he a club legend? No, he's not a club legend at Arsenal. I don't look at Mesut Ozil and say he's a club legend. The word legend gets thrown around too easily. I don't think there's too many legends in the last kind of 15 years that I would consider. So I look at Aaron Ramsey as someone that I would consider up there with that kind of status, because he won us 2 FA Cups with those winning goals and was at the club for a long time. And ultimately, it was the club that kind of let him down regarding him going off to Juventus. So... And if you look at players like Liam Brady, of course, who also left the club to go off to teams like Juventus, and we still consider them club legends, I think the word legend gets thrown around ridiculously easy. But I don't look at too many players in the last kind of 10 years, certainly, that you would consider to be club legends. I don't even look at someone like Cesc Fabregas. I kind of find it hard to look at someone like Cesc Fabregas as a club legend. And someone said that to me yesterday. He's like, you can't consider Ozil a club legend if you don't consider Cesc, because Cesc gave us more in those years. I think Cesc was incredibly important during those years. But I'm not sure. Santi ain't not legend. Do you mean Santi is a legend? Santi I would look at as certainly someone that would be up there as kind of a modern legendary figure at Arsenal for sure. Loved him, absolutely loved him. As Thomas Rosicky, loved Thomas Rosicky, but I wouldn't call Thomas Rosicky an Arsenal legend for me. I wouldn't look back in 20 years and go, Thomas Rosicky is someone that sticks in my mind. Whereas I'd look at Aaron Ramsey as someone that won us 2 FA Cups with those goals towards the end of games, had some amazing seasons, like the season where he scored a lot of goals. The one against Liverpool reminds me a lot. Scored goals against Spurs, scored goals that were really important for Arsenal in the grand context of things. And in 10 years' time, I'll look back in the last decade of the 2010s to 2020 and go, yeah, Aaron Ramsey and Santi Cazorla are probably the 2 players that stand out for me. Alexis is a strange one to talk about, but going back to kind of the original the conversation, Ozil is not someone that I would consider a club legend, but he was someone that I would look at with a lot of fondness and one of the best technically gifted players that Arsenal have certainly ever had. Consistency will always be one of the biggest problems with him, for sure. But in his raw talent and raw ability, he's probably the best player in the squad in regards to his actual talent and the ability he had. He could just never put it onto the team on a consistent basis. And that's what separates him when people are trying to compare him with like Dennis Bergkamp, which I find hilarious, because Dennis Bergkamp was such a consistent player for Arsenal and what he gave with the club. And I think he was more talented as well than Ozil. So when you look at that kind of comparison, that's a bit of a struggle. We've had a super chat, if I can find it. Where is it? There it is. Aaron Q. Arian, much appreciate the donation, mate. Always a pleasure to have you in the chat, son. Let's see what other people are saying in the chat box. In my opinion, you can't be considered a legend unless you don't win a league title. I don't think that's necessary. I think that's kind of, in a way, and I'm not saying that you're an arrogant person, Omar, but I think it's an arrogant perspective to say that, and an expectation of Arsenal as a title-winning club. Arsenal have not been a title-winning club for 16 years. You can't consider it based just on that, because there's been periods of Arsenal's history where we've not been anywhere near winning the title. The title in '89 was a complete shock in a way, because Arsenal had never been near the title before we won it in '89. And I think it's a very kind of short-sighted view to consider Arsenal as a consistent title-winning club when that is not. The only 2 consistent title-winning clubs in the country, and you hate to say it, are Liverpool and Manchester United. So you can't look as a legend of the club at Arsenal for someone who's only just won a league title. I mean, let me just check on something. I think there's a really good example of a player that didn't win a league title that you would certainly describe as a legend. And that's Liam Brady. Liam Brady never won a league title, but he is certainly a club legend for sure. I mean, he won the FA Cup in 1979 at Arsenal and the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup. He got us to a final in that. So I don't think you can categorize a legend as purely saying that someone that's won the league at the club, because that's a very kind of, I think it's an arrogant view of a club that ultimately Arsenal are not a consistent title-winning club. They're just not. They have won titles in the past, several titles, but not in the modern context whatsoever. Liam Brady didn't win a league title, no. So I don't think it can be categorized as that whatsoever. I cannot believe you think Ramsey is a legend, says Dave. And that's, at the end of the day, it's completely opinion. Like, if you think that he is, great. If you think he isn't, great. Like, it's completely. And to be honest, club legends could kind of come down to who you as a fan. You as a fan have your own personal view of what you would consider to be a club legend, and that is completely fair enough. But it's interesting that we're talking about this kind of as. We're talking about this in the context of Mesut Ozil, who I don't believe, in my view, to be a club legend. Far from it. But I would consider players like Aaron Ramsey to be that. I think that ultimately Aaron Ramsey is a little bit kind of unfashionable to choose, because you look at like the likes of Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira that were there at the same time. There was a lot of players of great quality there that won leagues and titles and cups. But they were very fortunate to be in kind of that period. Whereas Aaron Ramsey, in a period where Arsenal weren't able to spend lots of money, was one of the key figures in turning Arsenal's fortunes in regards to trophies around, and kind of pushed us back up there and kept us in the Champions League and won us countless FA Cups now, and was involved in several FA Cup wins. So whilst I don't think Ramsey, in terms of his quality as a raw quality player, is close to Thierry Henry, that is not what I'm saying. And I don't think legendary status either is purely based on a player's quality. I don't think you look at a player and say that I hate to use this example, but if you think about like ratings of players out of 100, you look at Thierry Henry and you're going into the 90s. Do I think that Aaron Ramsey goes into the 90s instead of quality? No, but that's not what defines a club legend for me. A club legend is not defined by the raw quality of the player. Otherwise, you'd look at Mesut Ozil, because based on raw talent and raw ability, he's one of the best raw quality players in terms of the talent and the technical ability that he possesses that Arsenal have ever had, along with Alexis Sanchez. But I would never consider those two to be more of a club legend than I would Aaron Ramsey. That's just how I view what a legend is, and that's fine if you don't agree with that. It's down to personal opinion. Thapello says, if Ramsey ended his career at Arsenal, then I would have considered him a legend. Well, in that case, do you not consider Thierry Henry a club legend because he went off to Barcelona? So I'm not sure. You can consider Patrick Vieira a club legend because he went off to Juventus. I don't think that's a legitimate thing, because I know Danny. I think Danny from Bergkamp Wonderland, if I speak to him, he struggles to. I mean, he can feel free to correct me, Danny, all you like. But from speaking to Danny, I remember him saying that he doesn't really consider Henry a legend because he left the club for Barcelona. He left the club in a time where we needed him, and some people would not consider him in that sense. So I don't think that you can say it's just basically down to that. So yeah, Sarah says Aubameyang wants to become a legend. That interview was cringe. Yeah, I would not say that. If Aubameyang wants to become a legend, then he needs to do a lot more than what he has done. He won us an FA Cup with his performance in that kind of final against Chelsea, but it needs to kind of be that consistent across the time that he's been at the club. And Aubameyang in itself, if he's not committing, if he's not kind of pushing us to achieve things, and if you look at the kind of way he's been since that contract's been signed, if anything, it's tarnishing his kind of reputation at the club a little bit in terms of performances this season. You hope that he turns around. I pray he turns it around. But yeah, no, not for me. Not for me. Talent, performances, titles, character, and loyalty. Ramsey doesn't tick a couple of those boxes. And Yannick, that's completely your perception of what you consider a club legend. And to be fair, I've turned around and said that so-and-so, I don't think he's a legend. I don't think he's a legend. I don't think you're right for this reason. That's my opinion. And you're never going to change my opinion on what I view a club legend to be. That's just not one of those things you would change your opinion based on what someone else says to you, because your view of what you consider a club legend is going to be different to someone else. It's interesting now we've gone down this route when we're talking about Mesut Ozil, isn't it? I think, if anything, going down this route kind of shows you in a way that how kind of he's viewed as by a lot of the fan base. Check Ozil's agent's Twitter. I don't know who is Ozil's agent. I don't know if someone's retweeted it. I mean, Z might have retweeted it. Let's have a look. No, well, I don't know. So if you can find me the then I'll have a look on Twitter. Tivo says Ozil was a global superstar at a time Arsenal could still attract that caliber of player. Sadly, we wouldn't be able to sign another Ozil now, given the current status of the club. If Arsenal could, I agree with you completely. The caliber that Ozil was when we signed him was huge. It was such a massive thing when we signed him, and it didn't necessarily work out. But to sign a player that was like considered the best number 10 in the world when he signed, playing with some fantastic players and players that Ronaldo used to say that he loved playing with, Mesut Ozil, these types of players. Like, you look at that and you look and you think it was huge, absolutely massive when we signed him. And ultimately, I don't think Arsenal really ever backed it up. That was one of the biggest things, is that we signed Alexis, we signed Lacazette, we signed Aubameyang, but we never really added that marquee centre midfielder. We never really added that marquee central defender. And we signed players like Xhaka for 30-something million. We signed Mustafi for 30-something million, but these weren't like proven players that were what we would call world class when we signed them. And that's what we failed to do with the Mesut Ozil signing, is we failed to consistently back it up with quality signings after we got him. And maybe Arsenal would be in a different place right now. And maybe some might say that we wasted the time that we had with Mesut Ozil, with the lack of kind of commitment that we had in the transfer market after we didn't back up Alexis and Ozil signings with more quality in the positions that we needed to. We brought in some players before Ozil, like Santi, for instance. But then there were other signings that just didn't make too much sense, like Xhaka, like Mustafi, like arguably Podolski prior to Ozil coming in. So it's a shame that we never did, because maybe if we had have given Ozil like the striker that he desperately needed, and whilst I appreciate Olivier Giroud and what he did at the club, if you're looking at kind of what Ozil needs and what he wants, Olivier Giroud is not going to be that striker. Olivier Giroud is kind of a striker that works really good with his back to goal, obviously good in the air, link-up plays nice. And you want a link, if you're going to have a nice link-up play, you want kind of a Kai Havertz kind of player playing in behind him. So he's got the link-up play and Havertz can be set through. Mesut Ozil's your creator. And if you're playing a creative player like Ozil behind a Giroud, you kind of lack that cutting edge up top. And you need that to come from the wide areas, which at the time we had either Walcott, and then we got it a bit with Alexis, but we then never backed it up with the defensive players to hold the line when we needed to hold the line and keep clean sheets and keep the goals down. So I think Ozil definitely suffered from us not backing him up with significant defensive and central midfield signings, for sure. Arsenal, Chelsea Vet 79 says Arsenal have lost all or any pull in the transfer market. Who would go? Leftovers and crumbs from now on? I don't think that's this. I mean, you look at Gabriel, who we signed in. You look at Thomas Partey that we got in. So I don't agree. Obviously, I'm assuming you might be a Chelsea fan, which might leave the bias in some sense. But if you also look at Chelsea and you go that you look and you've spent 200+ million on all of these players, and Frank Lampard did better in a season where he wasn't able to sign any players so far. If you're a player looking at Chelsea right now and you're going, right, well, some of the biggest talents in Europe in Havertz and Werner and Ziyech have gone there, and they're not improving and they're not getting any better. If you're the mentality of that player, you would turn around and say, do I want to go Chelsea? I'm not saying they want to come Arsenal. That's not what I'm saying. But I think they would look at other clubs over Chelsea for sure right now. I don't think Chelsea are the most attractive place to look at as a club whatsoever. Sarab says, spot on, Tom. We never spent any money on more than one signing in a season. You remember the summer that we only signed Petr Cech? Like, if you want to back up the signing of Mesut Ozil, you don't just go out and sign a has-been, that's harsh, but a really experienced goalkeeper that, if we're real, was he any better than Wojciech Szczesny? Because I don't think he was. So there you go. Alastair says Robin van Persie is a legend. Wow. I wouldn't go there. My categorization of a legend is kind of ruined by what happened at the end of the time. So yeah. Balaji says that transfer window where we didn't sign a single outfield player, as I said, is absolutely ridiculous. DS Unlimited said Chelsea are not the most attractive team. No, they're far from being the most attractive team for sure. Let's try and keep the caps locks down in the chat. I tend to not read out those comments. Anthony Michael says Ozil best moments: excitement when he signed, first goal, goals against United, winning goal against Barcelona, 4 versus Liverpool. Oh wait, not a legend. And that's the thing, Anthony, is a lot of people forget those things. A lot of people forget the things like in those games because it was so long ago, and kind of in a weird way, Ozil's career is kind of a microcosm of Arsenal's last, from say 2000 to 2015. Really kind of successful in the first half of his time at the Arsenal. Was with players like Alexis Sanchez. We were winning FA Cups regularly, and we were in the Champions League. Second half of Ozil's time at Arsenal, and it's just a downward slope, and that's kind of a microcosm of what Arsenal have been in a way of the last couple of decades. So I think it's a nice representation of how things have gone. Iron Cub says anyone other than Giroud and Walcott in the front, and he would have broken the assist record. Yeah, his assist record at the club, the way he could have broken that Thierry Henry record there that De Bruyne, I think, equaled with Henry. If we'd have had someone of real quality up top, maybe we would have been able to give him that, but we didn't. We didn't back him up with signings that we needed to. Tom, remember when Ozil was on his way to smash Henry's record in February, and Giroud and Walcott and co started missing all of their chances? Yeah, as we just talked about that, haven't we? So he really really did have that. I thought he could have been something really amazing if we'd have added the signings that we needed to add to him. Ismail says Julian Brandt or Buendia. Which one do you prefer? For me, it's Buendia all day long. I think Brandt is too much of a risk for me personally, and I'd rather sign someone who's completely on the up than someone who's arguably slightly declined over the last year. I know that things haven't worked out, and you shouldn't look at things maybe in a year context, but I think that Buendia is someone that it changes the way Arsenal look at the transfer market as well. By looking and bringing someone from within England is also a big pull for me. DS Electronics says, big up Tom, you are more consistent than our number 10. Thanks, mate. I don't know if I'm consistent. I certainly do change my views depending on the evidence that's presented. Teng Vang says the German Ozil was fantastic. Yeah, I always had a doubt he was going to fit at Arsenal. My biggest regret is the club didn't go out and buy top players to buy around him, as we've kind of talked about. Iron Cub says, I just hope now that he is leaving, people will just thank him and remember the good moments instead of just going on and on about the drama. It's not going to happen, Iron Cup. It's just not the fan base that we've got, unfortunately. There will be fans that only view him in a negative light, and that's a real shame. And I wish there was more positive people. I really do. But yeah, there you go. Akane says, Tom, I can't believe you are blaming Giroud. Man, Giroud is still playing, and he's playing video games and tweeting. What? I don't know what you're on about, mate. As I say, it's not about blaming Giroud. As I said, I got a lot of respect for the guy, but if Arsenal had signed a striker that would have suited playing with Ozil, I think we would have got a lot better from the team, is all I'm saying. I don't think the type of striker he was suited what we had with Mesut Ozil. Porky Pork says we didn't buy anyone to go around him because we didn't have any money. Well, we did have money because we signed Granit Xhaka and we signed Mustafi. Like, we did have money. We spent a lot of money in the years that we've had Ozil there, a lot of money. So it's not an argument for me that we didn't have the money, because we did. We spent money. We spent a lot. Baku, can't forgive him for that. I mean, there's a lot more than just Ozil for Baku. I mean, if you're blaming that solely on him, that's slightly agenda driven, I think. Matt Alexander says just need to put Ozil to one side and move forward and look to the future of the club. 100%. Could not have put it better myself. That's what you need to have your mindset of. Now he's gone, remember the good times, don't linger on the negativity, and look forward to what is going to come next. I think there's a really exciting period coming. You think about the players that are leaving: Ozil, Socrates, Mustafi, David Luiz, even some of the smaller players we're seeing going, like Kolasinac, Matt Macy. And I know that Matt Macy's done nothing wrong, but just moving on. and moving into an area where we're going to be able to bring in players that are under Mikel Arteta's mould, under the new club's regime, with Raul not being there, which I think is a big thing. I think that Edu has got an incredibly hyperbolic amount of criticism right now, because I think you look at the last summer, we brought in Thomas Partey and Gabriel. Yes, we needed to bring in another signing, but now you look at the work that's going on this January, we're moving players out that we needed to. And I hope that Edu is credited by a lot of the people that threw him under the bus over the last 6 months. So that's completely fair play to the guy and Arteta to getting these players out, moving the players on that need to be. There have been mistakes. Saliba's situation was a big, big mistake. But hopefully we're going to learn from those and we can push forward on from that. Ironcub says, just 2 years ago, we were being linked with Ryan Fraser. Even the links we were getting nowadays are exciting me. It gives me hope. The fake creator says, we've been buying the wrong players since Ozil and Sanchez until Tierney and Gabriel this season. And you look at the time that Edu has been here, some of the kind of signings that make you think, wow, things are changing, have been under Edu. Now, I said a few weeks ago, when the form was really bad, if we didn't bring anyone in by the Crystal Palace game, then I would be very much on the train of saying that Edu, you need to have serious questions asked of him. But if we do get to that game where we've not brought anyone in, but we have moved out Socrates, Kolasinac, Macy, Ozil, possibly Mustafi, like you look at these players, that's some really good bits of business done by the technical director. And then we look at the end of the January window, and you look at the way we've kind of brought players through now, like Smith Rowe and Martinelli, and how the form has changed. That changes things. So I think you have to look at things with an open mind, see the things that are changing, and push on from there. Do you think a lot of people's opinions will quickly change on Arteta and Edu if they manage to, in the next couple of windows, to remove all these deadwood players, need something to reunite the fan base? Ultimately, no. I think there is always going to be people that will fall on their sword of hating Arteta and hating Edu and hating the club. As I genuinely think people do hate the club and have benefited a lot from their hatred of how things are going. And that's a real shame that people are giving them that. A real big shame. But that's the life that we live. There's nothing we can necessarily do about that. But that's why we over here try and be as positive as we possibly can be for as much as we can be. But remain realistic and remain analytic and criticize when criticisms are needed to be given. I feel that we've done that this season. I feel like this season we supported the coach. I feel that we went through a very difficult period and we rightly asked questions and criticized when we needed to. And now things have turned around. I think we're looking at the positives and thinking, yeah, you know what? It was the right idea maybe to stick with him in the short term. And now we're maybe reaping the benefits of that. If we do go out and we move on a lot of deadwood, I think it will definitely improve some of the mood around the fan base. If we don't bring anyone in, I think that will irritate a lot of people. But then some people might turn around and say that, who do you bring in? I think we need to bring in a centre midfielder as a priority, not a creative midfielder. I would look at someone playing next to Partey. The emergence of Emile Smith-Rowe is great. I think we need to bring in both. But as a priority, I'd be looking at someone like Bissouma, for instance, to be brought in as a priority. Because we now have Smith-Rowe. Whereas Partey is here and there with his fitness, and the players that we've got replacing him are not reliable, is probably the best way to describe them. Whereas Partey is a reliable player in terms of his quality, but seemingly not in his fitness at Arsenal, which is a real shame because he's never had injuries prior to this. So in short, Porky, no, I don't think overall a lot of people will change their minds because people are willing to fall on their sword on certain aspects. Which is very apt for the discussions around Ozil. But I think that there will be some more open-minded people, some better people that ultimately will hopefully change their mind about things, and that's fair enough. Iron Cub says, I would go for the creative midfielder. I think Xhaka, Sabas, El Neni aren't great, but at least that's some depth if Emile Smith-Rowe gets injured. And this is the point, Iron Cub. This is why I'm saying that we need to bring in both. And I had a really good discussion with Drew yesterday on social media. You may have seen it. You'll find him at Logic Lara on Twitter. And we talked about Buendia. He is not as inclined to feel that Buendia is someone that we should go for because we've got Emile Smith-Rowe. We shouldn't be blocking that pathway. And is Buendia going to want to come in and play if we're not going to guarantee him time? Is he the right position? Is he the right player? And we should look to bring in a centre midfielder. I agree that we should prioritise a centre midfielder, a number 8, but Arsenal still do need, in my view, the Emile Smith-Rowe esque competition, because if he gets injured or if he gets hit by COVID, it's unforgivable. It's the same with Leno. Like, because we're in a situation with COVID right now, if Leno was to contract COVID or needed to self-isolate for whatever reason, and we're relying on Runnison for the next 3 games, it's not like we had a Pablo Mari in a goalkeeper. It's not like when we lost Gabriel that we had Pablo Mari to come in. We don't have a goalkeeper of the quality comparatively to Pablo Mari that we did when Gabriel went. So if Leno goes, that leaves us really vulnerable in the goalkeeping position. So backup goalkeeper, backup a creative midfielder are priorities. But for me, the centre midfield position is also a massive priority for the club that they need to look at. But sure, and have a look at the discussion me and Drew had, because it was a very, very good one. I did end up needing to go to sleep because he kept me up until about 1 a.m. But it was a good one. Dare at Krubra says, Arsenal is a toxic club. I have nothing more to do with them. Arsenal is dead and going nowhere soon. Don't hold your breath for anything spectacular in the transfer window. Toxic. I mean, if you're an Arsenal fan and that's your view, that's a real shame, because you should stick with Arsenal through the good times and the bad times. Your love for the club should not be affected in any way. Your liking of them and like how you kind of view it will change. But if you have nothing to do with Arsenal, you never were an Arsenal fan, ever. And I wouldn't consider anyone to be an Arsenal fan if they've kind of said, I'm done with things. Like, I'm done with it. That's not a fan. That's not what a fan does. A fan goes through it, and you're very privileged to be a fan of Arsenal because we've had some really, really good times at Arsenal. And if you look at some of the other clubs that people are fans of, that are in lower leagues, that are down further down the table, then you are a privileged fan to be an Arsenal supporter. You may not feel like it a lot of the time. And I know that we look at things in a very different context to how people, fans of other clubs lower down the leagues or lower down the table, look at their club. But if you're going to throw in the towel on being an Arsenal fan based on how things are going, you never were an Arsenal fan in the first place. So that's my view on that for sure. Naga says, remember when UK fans' opinions mattered more than some idiot halfway across the planet? Yes. That's one of the greatest things about doing this channel, is that obviously we've been able to connect with fans from all over the planet, and there is no one, I would not consider any of, like, so for instance, the likes of Lee Judges, who comes on the channel all the time, really good friend, and I was sent an amazing video this morning of Lee. I do not value Lee's opinion any greater than any other fan that is anywhere else in the planet because they can't attend games. Like, Lee can go to every single game. Someone who's in America that loves Arsenal to their core is as much of a fan of Arsenal as Lee is, as I am, as anyone that's going to every single game. Going to games doesn't make you more of a fan, because it's a privilege to be able to go to games that some people do not have. And it's a shame that a lot of people view it in that way, that they are more of a fan than some others because they go to games. It's a very toxic, that's toxic, and it's a very kind of arrogant way of being a fan as well. If you go to games, you're very privileged. I get to go to games semi-regularly when I can, being quite close to London. So, and it's an absolute privilege to go. But just because so-and-so in America or Africa or Asia or wherever can't go to games doesn't mean they're less of a fan than me at all. If they love the club completely, that is all that is enough for Arsenal. Now you may put more emphasis in someone's opinion because you don't agree with what they're saying. What I'm saying is, in the actual value of your location, that does not affect the value of your opinion. That's not something. Let's time these spammers out. Lingo Star says Arsenal would be nothing without international fans. Maybe not nothing, but certainly they wouldn't be the size that they are now without the international fans, definitely. So Hill says, Tom, what do you reckon about Balogun's situation and Nketiah links to Wolves? Sell Nketiah, promote Balogun. That's a very short answer to that, but that is ultimately my view on that. Sell Nketiah, promote Balogun. Very simple. Gabriel says, without international fans, Arsenal would never have the cash to have them players. Agreed. You need international fans. You need that base. You need that connection. That's why Arsenal are ultimately the stature I wouldn't say there'd be nothing without international fans, but you can't not be where you are right now without that backing, without that support, without everywhere from around the world. Doug S. Otto says, in the USA, we need to have 4 streaming services to watch every Arsenal game. Doug, we need to have like 3 streaming services to watch some Arsenal games. So count yourself lucky, mate. There's some games we don't even get to watch unless you're at the game because of the 3 o'clock kickoff. So I wouldn't moan. You can watch every Arsenal game. Right now we can because we're in lockdown and there's no fans in the grounds. But to be able to watch every Arsenal game during the normal season, you're very lucky to have that. So don't use that. Toby says, I have been an Arsenal fan since I was 10 and I live in America. I wish I could go to Arsenal games. There are many passionate Arsenal fans all around the world. Exactly, Toby. And a fair play to you for being a fan since you were 10. Owen says, it's impossible to get every game and we have season tickets. I apologise. I wasn't born in England. Yeah, I know. It sucks. It sucks that we can't watch every game. If you're actually in England, it's absolutely mental. That guy D says, we need to risk a big contract for Balogun rather than losing. But what constitutes a big contract? I saw some ludicrousy about giving Balogun 100 grand a week. I mean, I think, who is it to tweet? I think it was Tackers maybe tweeted a picture of it. 100 grand for Balogun. I mean, and the hypocrisy of that statement after complaining about like some players that we've given too big of contract to. Like, it's just so funny. Like, it's just really funny. It's done for attention. I know that. But 100 grand a week. No, if he wants 100 grand a week, he can go. Like, if that's what he's asking for, then he can go. He's not. He's what done what in the senior team? You want to break? Like, you want to completely try and break? Like, we want to move on Ozil because we want that kind of wage gone. We want to learn from our mistakes about giving contracts to players, and then we want to give a player that's never done a single minute of Premier League football 100 grand a week. You mental? Like, come on, man. At least put some sensible views across, not just trying to get attention, please. Please, for the sake of our... if you want to say like £20,000, like that's kind of a little bit more realistic. And you look at some of the players, like, I don't think Holding's on a huge amount of money. I don't think Lucas Torreira, who was signed for like 23 million, was on more than like 60 grand a week. So... come on, man. Anthony Michaels, in the UK, people love NFL and WWE, but have never been into the Super Bowl or WrestleMania. Still real fans. I mean, if you're going to spread, obviously going to broaden the view, then yeah, if you're a fan of something, you're a fan of something. It's just, I love ice hockey. I love watching it. I don't watch it religiously, but when I went to university, we had an ice rink and the varsity was all about ice hockey. Absolutely loved it. Great sport. But yeah, it's just one of those, like, you're no less than a fan just because of where you are in the world. Absolutely no chance. I remember when Wenger had a 100k cap and we all went crazy for the club to break that, says Owen. Yeah. Lords Jabberwock says, Tom, do you still want Arsenal to operate in the same manner as Dortmund? I don't want them to operate in the same way as Dortmund. I want them to look at Dortmund as an example and take some of the things that they do as inspiration. You can't replicate that. RB Leipzig's another, like, whilst I would love a Ralf Rangnick for his kind of the way that he spots players, those models are very different. Because RB Leipzig were a club that would develop players and then sell them on. Now they're going to gradually change that. Arsenal can't do that because they're a very old club and they have done things in a certain way for so long that you can't suddenly become a Dortmund. You can't suddenly become an RB Leipzig. It just doesn't work. You can't do that. There's too many players. It takes too many seasons, and the fan base would not be accepting of what it would take to do that. And what I mean by accepting is you would be suffering in the mid-table for several seasons trying to change the way that the club is structured. It's not going to be feasible. The fans wouldn't accept what it would take. But I think there's elements of what you see from Dortmund and from Leipzig that you can take on board to push you forwards, if that makes sense. You can't do it exactly, but there are aspects of the management and the running of their clubs that you can certainly look at in terms of recruitment, in terms of scouting, in terms of areas of the world in which players are brought in from, which is more difficult now because of Brexit, etc. So it's going to be interesting to see, as I say all the time, if Arsenal's recruitment has changed dramatically with Edu, with Arteta, and we are seeing signs of change with Gabriel and Partey and these players coming in. So fingers crossed, we'll see improvement. I'm going to go for a few more minutes completely to try and get some more of your thoughts and questions. According to Ozil's agent on Twitter, he has agreed a 3-year deal with Fenerbahce. Okay, I mean, I haven't seen yet any, like, no one said what his agent's at is. I don't know what his agent's at is. Someone tweet me. Someone tag me in this tweet, please, so I can see it. I'd love to be able to see this tweet. Someone tag me in it at the Gonna Talk TV, please. Kuroko boy says, I really don't like Balogun's ego. Just play. You're still nothing. I don't know. Strikers need egos. Strikers need to be arrogant. Thierry Henry, one of the most arrogant men on the planet, needed that arrogance to be able to be as good and as confident in his own ability as he was. I would never ever criticize a player for having an ego or for being arrogant. I think it's a quality that the most lethal strikers in the world need to be. I need that. I think they need that. I don't look at that as a criticism personally. We don't know if he's asked for 100 grand a week. That's just something that some randomer has said. But if there is any truth, and say hypothetically that was the case, then you say no. Sorry, mate. See you later. So you can't be held to ransom. We've just been, a lot of people that are wanting Balogun to sign 100 grand a week have just said that we've been held to ransom by Ozil in the past. So it's hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious. Yannick says, I don't think the contract is about money. I think it's about playing time. And I 100% agree with you, Yannick. It is about playing time. And that's why I'm much more in favour of moving on Nketiah, telling Balogun that next season, Lacazette's got a year left on his deal. He's either going to be sold or he's going to be there for one more year. You are going to be in the Premier League squad. You're going to be used like Nketiah has this season, and then maybe the year after, when Lacazette has either gone or has already been sold and Aubameyang's got a year left on his deal, Balogun, we're going to start putting more emphasis on you. That should be the trajectory of a player like Balogun. That's sensible. That's the way that it should be run. TGT says, don't tell me about being a true fan. I'd love the club more than you can ever imagine. Even this crap season, I've bought kits. New year, new decisions. That's just it. I'm tired of their load of rubbish. What I was saying earlier was that I don't consider anyone a fan that's chucked the club in. Like, that's what I said to you. I don't think anyone can be a fan if they have given up with Arsenal based upon a period of decline, a period where it's not going our way, which is what you said. You said you'd had enough of them, and that was it. You were done. That's why I said what I said, which I'm willing to respond to, and that's why I highlighted your comment. I'm not going to ignore it. Gabrielle says, how do we know Balogun is better than Nketiah? Nketiah is ahead in the under-21s and was a better goal scorer too. I think in the short term, you look at what's happened in the senior team. You can look at the under-21s, you can look at the under-23s, and I understand that. But ultimately, what really matters is the impact that the players have on the senior pitch, and I don't think Nketiah's had much of, if anything, an impact on the senior game at Arsenal, and it's the right thing Arsenal to do is to move him on. With Balogun, we have not yet seen him perform on the senior pitch. Sometimes some players absolutely explode after not having the most amazing youth career. So I don't think you can pin everything on the youth side of things, and in youth football, you're playing against other youth players, and maybe it's going to be slightly different for him. Russ Morgan says, I will not be spending any more money on the merch on the Cronkies open their purse strings. I mean, they have. They have opened their purse strings because they went out and got Pepe and Partey. So it's a myth that they haven't put any money in. But I think if you want them to spend more before you spend any money, that's fair enough, Russ. That's completely fair enough. Morgan says, of course we don't know Balogun is better than Eddie, but if he isn't getting the chance, how would we know? Balogun is now demanding to be noticed, and he has every right to. Completely agree with that. Thapello says, I don't understand Mikel Arteta because the man says he wants him to sign a new contract, but he is not giving him game time. And the platform is actually baffling. Give the kid a game. I think he could have given him more opportunities, especially in the Europa League this season. He hasn't done. I think that's because he's got Nketiah there, and maybe he's got more faith in Nketiah than a lot of the fans do, is probably a reason behind that. Matt says, I just hope the club learns from past mistakes. It will probably be messy for a while, but the good times will come back. Everyone needs to pull together. Spot on, fella. Russ says, Nketiah, Willock, Nelson aren't of the desired quality. Send them out on loan this January with a view to selling them, or just sell them now, in my view. Sell Nketiah now, sell Willock now, sell Nelson now. Like, I've seen enough for me to make a decision on those guys to say that if Arsenal can get some good fees for them, I'm more than happy with that, because we've got players coming through the youth team that should be given a chance. These guys have been given a chance, and they're not yet, for me, having enough of an impact. Nelson is the one that you would have the biggest question mark over in regards to maybe he could in the future. A lot of people are very much on the Nelson bandwagon, would like him to stay. But Nketiah and Willock, for me, if we can get moves for them, sell them. We've got players like Kurjan coming through, Aziz coming through. We've got young players coming through that just need to be given time and given more opportunities. And that won't happen if those players are there and ultimately taking up those spots. Joe says, Tom, stop this KSE Partey Pepe. I gave you the AST links showing you they didn't do that. I'm still waiting for that, Joe. DM me again with those links, because I haven't seen those links. So DM me, please, Joe. No Sleep says Nelson would be a mistake. And also, Joe, by the way, The Athletic who have very connected sources, have confirmed it, who I would trust over the AST, that I feel themselves are very much against the Kroenke ownership. So trust in The Athletic all the way. No Sleep says Nelson would be a mistake for me, but Willock and Nketiah aren't ready. Daniel says Balogun needs to go out on loan for the rest of the season to actually show what he can do. We're not going to sell Nketiah in January in favour of a player that we've never really used. Balaji says it's difficult to get a good fee for Nketiah, Willock and Nelson in January. Sending them on loan now and selling them on the summer makes a lot more sense. It's a good point. Sustainable Life says sell Nelson and put a buyback clause in. Aaron says move those three on and keep the youth conveyor belt going. Yep, 100%. Let's scroll up a bit more and get some more comments. Anthony says Balogun should be getting off the bench against Newcastle. I agree. He should definitely be in the squad for the Newcastle game. Absolutely spot on with that, mate. The Fake Creator says Eddie is in a weird place. Too good for youth, but not there in the senior team. Aaron says, imagine if John Jules was one of the three to hold down a place in the first team. John Jules is someone that I think everyone's actually sleeping on a little bit. I think he's a very highly rated striker. The club have got a lot of faith in. Paul Bradley says we can get around 65 million from Nketiah, Willock and Nelson if we are a smart club. I think you might be hard pressed, but you never know in the match in the way of football. Update on our fish emoji says Owen, yeah, it's in the works, mate. Few days, and hopefully it will be sorted. Joe says the Athletic have no proof and prove nothing. AST looked at the accounts. The Athletic haven't. They reference nothing. No accounts. You might need to look in how things work, Joe. Like the Athletic are the pinnacle for me in terms of having connected, reliable sources. And it's just not. I don't buy it. Like again, please, instead of commenting on here, hop onto Twitter and DM me, please. Balaji says Tom, official from Fenerbahce president statement on Ozil Twitter. You've twittered me the news link. You've DM'd it to me. Thank you, Balaji. Fenerbahce president, it's a dream for us. The dream is about to come true. Okay. Thank you for sending that to me. Finally, someone did. Interesting. What time did this article come out? It came out at 12:55. Is that Turkish time? So that's a couple of hours ahead of us. English. Change this to English. Last update at 9:55. So this morning. Okay, let's a video talking about this. So let's throw this up on the screen for you. This is what I want. Yeah, he said he wanted to quit before. The president of the clubs. Let's Ozil. Ozil at Fenerbahce. According to the news given by A Sport with the last-minute brand continuing the transfer duties, Fenerbahce reached a principle with Mesut Ozil. The deal would be 3.5 years. It was claimed that Ozil and Fenerbahce, who were previously on the agenda, that he will leave Arsenal and will make a 3.5-year contract. The parties have agreed. How many games does Ozil play? Okay, so that's just about his time at Arsenal. Is that Podolski? Jesus, that's an old picture. Both Ozil and Fenerbahce agree with the global brand. Okay, so the Puma, there's an agreement with Puma. The end of the season contract with the jersey sponsors is ending. Both Fenerbahce and Ozil have agreed with the same global brand. There is no problem on the Ozil front. There is no signature at the moment. Sponsorship, financial details, termination of the contract with Ozil seems to be transferred when problems are settled. Another has said it is a dream for us, who is the president, I believe. The dream is about to come true. Okay, so, I mean, if you needed confirmation on the show, you've just got it. So supposedly he is very much going to be going to he's going to be going there, which is interesting. Very, very interesting. So love that. Joe, you know what I'm going to say? Until you DM me these things, I'm not reading a single comment from you, son, because I'm so sick of you commenting without actually sending me any DMs. That's how it's going to go. Lord says, James Bench says, Saka is now more valuable than Gnabry. I mean, that's a big call. Gnabry is incredibly valuable, but he's going up there. He's going to be up there. Pradeep says, we should be patient. Look at Liverpool. They were patient for 30 years and won the league last season and won the UCL after 15 years. And look at us. It's been 16 years and we've now won the league. Owen says he'll be absolute cash cow for them. Yeah, he's going to get them a lot of money. Who's getting the number 10 shirt, says Daniel. I mean, who's going to take the number 10 for you? Emile Smith-Rowe? Apparently, I heard a rumor that Martinelli might take the number 10 shirt. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, DM it to me, Joe. Yonic Max says number 10 going to Pogba. Imagine if we got Pogba. Unbelievable scenes. Dakruba says name 3 players who you think we could sign that will make a difference in the team based on what you think we're missing, and tell me if you think we will sign them. 3 players that I think would make a difference to Arsenal right now. It's a good question. I think Buendia makes a difference. I think Basuma makes a difference. And I mean, the other one's got to be a backup keeper for me. Like, I'd sign Rufio on a 6-month deal until the summer, and then look to bring in like a David Raya in the summer. David Raya is not going to leave in the middle of the season, so maybe you give Rufio, who's just left Saint Etienne, a 6-month contract until the end of the season, and then get a David Raya in. So they're the 3 sign, all of which are coming from within England. So there's no problem with that. Buendia, Basuma, Raya, the 3 signings that I'd look at. We do need a right-sided centre-back as well, I think, we need to look at in that area. But as priorities, yeah, Buendia, Basuma, Raya, there's my 3. But I think you need to wait till the summer to get Raya, and I think that actually could add some legs in it as well. Cognac says, I'm pronouncing that right. So I'm just calling you Jay. I should have just called you Jay. Hey, Tom, do you think the club will make Ozil sign an NDA about what's happened during his last year? I mean, maybe. It wouldn't surprise me if that is the case, but would he sign it? I doubt that Ozil, from the way that he's tweeted about stuff, that he would be up for that, but maybe that's the only way that they're going to sanction the deal. And anyway, in 6 months' time, he's gone. So if they kept him at the club for 6 months, he would gone. They would have no power to make him sign an NDA at all. I think we're going to hear a lot of things come out from him, whether they're going to be true or not. We'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be very, very intriguing to see whether or not stuff does come out. Lord Jabberwatt says, Tom, why don't we go for someone like Fabian? Trust me, I'd love Fabian Ruiz, but he would cost so much money. Actually, to be fair, I don't know how long's left on his contract. Fabian Ruiz contract expiration 2023. Okay, so he's got 2.5 years left on his deal. So 2.5 years? Yeah, 2.5 years left on his deal. So he's still going to be expensive. I don't think you'd be able to pay the money it would take to get Ruiz at the moment. But yeah, Lord Jabberwock says about Ruiz rather than Basuma. I'd go for Basuma over Ruiz because of the Premier League experience. It's something that we need in the squad, is that Premier League experience. So he says, Tom, should we sell El Neni when Besiktas are interested? We never know. If they come with a good sized bid, and when I say a good sized bid for a player with a year left on his deal after this season, I'm looking between 5 and 10 mil, then yeah, you take it, because then you can start giving Aziz more minutes in the cup competitions and in off the bench and stuff like that. And you don't know what's happening with Guendouzi. We don't know what's happening with Torreira at the end of the season. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, if a good fee comes in for El Neni, sure, take it. Absolutely. Bremer at Torino says, Mitchell, any info? No, I have none. If the only Torino centre-back I know more about is Izzo, the Italian guy. So Adam Tucker says, the way people are dissing Nketiah is mad. Ain't this the guy who saved our blushes in the League Cup a few years ago? He ain't had much game time. The thing is, Adam, is that only lasts for so long. The credit from that only lasts for an amount of time, and he's had a lot of opportunities. He only recently reached 10 senior goals, I think it was, something which Martinelli did in his first 6 to 12 months at the club. So when you look at that, that tells you everything you need to know. For me, it's just he's just not for me that person. Matthew Hudson says, good morning. Well, from me, I'm liking this news. Gabriel says, so you want us to keep Sabas? No. When he gets to the end of his loan, he'll go back to Real Madrid. Tulip says, I'm concerned about Mainsley. He isn't getting played in the middle, and we are looking for Lamptey to replace Bellerin if he leaves. I don't know what will happen with him. I really want him to get some game time. I agree. I want him to get more game time, but where do you play him right now? I don't know where you play him, to be honest. Cheshire Ring says Alba is badly falling his position this season. Hopefully you can turn it around. Fingers crossed. Anyone else want to drop a comment in before we wrap things up? We've got about a minute left. Make sure you drop a like on the video, people, for us going for an hour discussing lots of your topics today. Toby says thoughts on Mendes from Sporting as a possible backup for Tierney. Very highly rated left back. I don't think he's a person that you sign to back up a 23-year-old left back. He's a person you sign to be your number one left back, to be honest. If you're looking at Sporting, we should be looking at someone like Pedro Gonçalves. Really, really good player. Really good player. Elliot says, greetings from Toronto. Great show. Is it the right time to make a bid for Grealish, or should we wait until this? I don't think he's going anywhere right now. If we do, it will be in the summer. And even then, I think we will be very, very much fortunate to get that deal over the line. Happy New Year, everyone. Big up, Tom. Thank you, May. Imagine the energy in midfield with Mainsley and Partey together. It's something that I've wanted to see, but we haven't seen yet. Europa League is essential. Best route. And that's one of the reasons why I think we still do need to sign this summer. This January, sorry. So we need to bring in extra quality, because if Emile Smith-Rowe goes, any chance of winning the Europa League is gone. Europa League, for me, becomes such a huge priority. If we can get past Benfica and progress again, we have a good chance of winning this competition. Getting into the Champions League through Europa League is possible, and something that Arsenal should not take lightly whatsoever. Use that competition. Use it to the best of our ability. Play the first team against both legs against Benfica. Do not risk anything in that competition. Needs to be a priority, 100%. That's going to wrap up today's show. We've gone on for an hour, which is a lot more than I expected to today. I've been speaking for an hour, which is I'm going to need a drink after this. Not a drink. I'm starting work in 2 hours. Yeah, we're going to do another show tomorrow. I'm going to be joined by Johnny Cochran, which is going to be good, talking to him. I'm also going to be talking to Alvaro Romero, who you guys know from coming on the show about a few months back. He's going to be coming on Friday. Alvaro Romero. He's going to be coming on Friday. So I look forward to speaking to him about Torreira's situation at Atletico Madrid. We might be doing a tactical breakdown on Emile Smith-Rowe specifically. And if we get, of course, linked to anyone in any greater amount of intensity, I'll look to do another tactical breakdown like we did with Buendia yesterday. There will be a preview for the Newcastle game the day before, and then there'll be a podcast the day after. In fact, I think Judges is going to be on as well. I think Mike might be on as well, and maybe Drew. Let me just check that for you. If I go onto my booking sheets for the podcast. So after the Newcastle game, it's Judges, Ola, and Mike are coming on. That's on the 10th. So that is on Sunday, because we play on Saturday. So Friday there will be also a preview, or I'll be doing it Saturday morning for the Newcastle game. So make sure you've got those notifications turned on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. There won't be another show today because I'm working from 2 to 11 on a Wednesday as normal. But there should be some good pieces coming out as well on 101. So make sure you check them out. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak to you as always. I will see you again very, very soon. And there should be some news about some emojis for the members as well. New emojis coming out soon as well. Congratulations, Tom, with your personal signing. Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. I know what you're talking about. Lovely stuff. Let me just check how many likes we got on the video, because I need to, of course, check whether or not we're going to see it. No, let's see if we can get 100 likes in the next 10 seconds with the people liking the video. We're going to count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. and 0. Let's refresh the page. Can we get to 100 likes? Yes, we can. Absolutely fantastic stuff, people. Appreciate your support on today's show. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal and cheerio.